Welcome back to Eddie's Launchpads, the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast for parents, carers, teachers and schools. Dogsthorpe Infant School is part of Hampton Academies Trust. We want every child to dream, believe and shine.
OK, Eddie, start the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's go.
This podcast is brought to you by Eddie Edster, the Dogsthorpe Infant School Wellbeing Dog.
Yes, it's the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast for parents, teachers and schools. Thank you for listening. Wherever you're listening around the world, it's wonderful that you're with us. Thank you for joining us. It's episode 150. I just can't believe it. And to mark that, we've got two very, very special guests. It's going out on a very, very important date that I'll tell you about a little bit later on. But we've got a guest on the show today that helped me start the podcast. I want to take you back almost 4 years. It was at the end of all of the lockdowns. Mrs. Waters got home one night and she said, I just don't know what to do of how I can get in touch with the parents and carers. We seem to have lost touch. They used to come into school, they used to read the newsletters, but they're not reading the newsletters. They're not hearing what I'm saying to them. I'm going out into the playground, but they keep asking me for the same dates. What can we do? And I said, I've absolutely no idea. I said, why don't we start a YouTube channel, which we did. And as you know, Mrs. Waters goes on a Monday and a Friday, and Eddie joins her on a Friday. And she brings the news that way, visually. But I was still thinking, what could we actually do? And then we enjoyed a day down at Ferry Meadows. If you know Peterborough, you'll know the beautiful setting of Ferry Meadows. And whilst Mrs. Waters and Eddie walked around the lake, I met with our best friend. He was at the time the vice chair of the governors. I met with him because he's got lots of experience in regard to the field of technology and EdTech. And we sat there over a cup of coffee and we chatted it through. And at the end of our conversation, we walked away with the idea for a podcast, this podcast. So it's a delight and a joy and a privilege to welcome Al Kingsley MBE. Welcome to the show, Al.
Hello, and congratulations back at you. 150, that is so cool, Dave.
Yeah, at 150, 110,000 downloads. It's just taken off, and it's incredible. And thank you, Al. When you sat there and said, "What about a podcast?" and I had no idea how to start it. Listeners, I had no idea. I was completely blind to it. I didn't know what to do. But with Al's help, by the end of the summer break, we were ready to fly, really. And we started in September 2021, and it grew and grew and grew. And now it's gone out across, and we've had hundreds of guests. And it's wonderful to have Al with us. Now, Al, first of all, congratulations on your MBE.
Thank you very much. Very, very proud of that.
Well, and so you should be, my friend, because the things that you do for the schools around the world and young people around the world, well, it's exemplary, really. It's wonderful. So thank you. Have you been to the Palace yet to collect it?
Well, I'm going in about 4 weeks' time to the Palace. So I'm very excited, and we shall see who we're going to get to meet there. But, you know, the most important thing about all the things I try and do in education is about community, Dave. And I think that links in so much to what you are doing with the podcast. It doesn't matter the topic. If you share a bit of love, a bit of care and bring community together, you can't go far wrong.
And Hampton Academies Trust has got some good news to share.
Well, there's always good news from Hampton Academies Trust because we're, you know, a trust that loves to celebrate. But yes, The good news is that we're growing. We have secured the support to build and be the operator of the new school on the south side of Peterborough at Great Haddon. The Hampton Academies Trust team, once again, have been selected and trusted to deliver a brand new primary school where we will have little people joining us in September 2026. And we are hugely happy and proud that we have been entrusted once again to take a new housing development and a new blank canvas and deliver a school that becomes the hub of the community and the heart of what we try and do at Hampton Academies Trust. But it also means we can tap into the amazing cohort of leaders and staff across the Hampton schools for their experience and best practice to make sure we start and hit the ground running, and opportunities where we can take their skills and help empower new teachers and teaching assistants coming to join our new school. Very much what we're about. We're much more focused around providing for our community across Peterborough than we are about worrying about anything too grand or large in the bigger picture. We're here, we've got a clear focus, and really, really good news for all of us, Dave.
Now, the other thing I want to talk about is your recent book. I can't say it's your new book because it's been out for a while, and I have to admit that I was one of those that ordered it very early on. Would you like to share something about the book, Al, and why you wrote it?
Thank you, firstly, for your kind words, Dave. And yes, I've been involved in the education space 30 years, and probably the biggest lever of change in education right now that we see in the very public optics is that link with technology and the role of AI, and what does that mean about future skills and what learning looks like and all the other conversations. But the truth is, it's become a bit of a lightning rod to highlight all the other issues and deficiencies we have within our education system. And at the heart of that, there's funding, there's what the curriculum is and whether it's fit for purpose for the 21st century workforce. There's the mindset of how do we keep and recruit and retain good teachers in a career where we expect more and more every year and pay often less and less. There's a bigger funding conversation, which is there just isn't enough to fund our schools and to make sure we maintain them and we make sure we give every child a fair and equitable opportunity. And then there's other questions. Does AI replace the role of teacher? Is the future of education something that's hybrid, that's up there in the cloud, that children can access from anywhere? Why do we have a problem with so many young people not seeing school as the place that they can thrive and excel in? And so I kind of reached that point, Dave, where it's like, I'm going to put my head above the parapet and do the research around the world. I'm very fortunate to be invited to come and speak at conferences around the world and have access to some amazing people and minds. Research it, bring it back together. In one sense, we're not alone. In another sense, actually, there are other places that have figured it out and we haven't yet. And we need to make sure that we have government that is willing to think long term, not just about the short term tweaks and fixes that will give them the electoral win, but actually will allow for long term sustainable change in education. And that takes courage and conviction for politicians. And it takes courage and convictions for people to stand up and say, this isn't right, and I'm going to tell you, here's all the answers, but I'm going to tell you these are the things we should be talking about. These are the questions we should be asking within our school, within our trust, within our community, within our country and the national education system. And I also think it's only fair and right that parents have a way to access an understanding of not just what they see at the school gates, but what's going on in education, the good and the bad, the challenges and the opportunities. And the more we're empowered and we're informed, then the better place we are to be part of that conversation. Maybe some of those parents will, if I'm very wishful thinking, will read the book and think, I'd like to be on the governor. I'd like to support schools in that journey. I recognise and see the pressures, and I see how maybe my skill set and experience could add value. And so it's a little bit of a rallying cry as well, I suppose. We're going through a journey of what does education look like, and that's really tough because the key values never change. And any good educator, and Dogsthorpe Infant is a great example, is we're not really, the curriculum's part B. The part A is developing the little person, the human being, the confidence for themselves to make their own decisions. And the word we often use is to give that child agency. And if you give a child the knowledge and you give them the context and you give them the skills, then you hopefully are the next people that will set the world alight. But as we move along, we also say, well, employers are saying, actually, I don't really care about all those curriculum bits. I don't really care about who's the best mathematician. I'm interested in who's got the best communication skills, critical thinking skills, imagination, because technology is doing all the other bit. So it's creating a focus on how do we change our curriculum, and also how do we make it fair, Dave? I used an analogy in the book, which is a Chinese proverb that really resonates with me, which is a stumbling bird will reach the forest first. And in essence, we've always had this mindset that the smartest child will be the most successful. Start off their academic career, and the brainy kids will get the best qualifications, the best jobs, and end of story. And there is traditionally a more of an Eastern mindset, which is about who works hardest. You don't have to be the smartest. If you work hardest, you can still get to the forest first. Or in educational terms, if you put the hours in and the work in, you can still get there. And so we're trying to change that and reflect on that, whilst also remembering it doesn't seem fair for all our learners to say you've got to remember everything for 2 or 3 years and then you've got 2 2-hour windows to prove what you know. For a lot of our learners, we're looking at different ways to assess understanding. So that's that whole fusion about kids need to feel there's a place and a relevance in school to want to attend, certainly for older children. And if they don't have the courses or the offers that link into what they're interested in, it's not a surprise that we have a challenge with attendance. On the educator side, well, the list is huge. I think it starts politically, nationally, with negative terminology and referencing around educators, politicizing them to imply they're more militant and unionized rather than simply some standing up for the fact that the system is at breaking point. Every government that comes up with some fresh ideas to tackle the social emotional needs of our learners just magically says, well, the schools can fix that as well, but add it to their list of things to do, without adding the funding for capacity. And so the two things I think that people most value in any role, and education is no different, that makes you feel like you want to stay somewhere, one is that you feel valued and appreciated. And the second is that you feel trusted enough to have a degree of autonomy. We let you use your professional judgment. And so when we have a move towards things that mean that, firstly, you can't do the things that you really want to do that make a difference in a child's life, and you're always having to deal with the officialdom, the next process. We're going to spend 10 hours filling out forms just to try and get the extra support that this child needs, when we all know we could do it in 2 hours if the system would just bend and flex. It's a real challenge. How do we mitigate that? Well, one is we are looking and saying, well, are there ways where technology can reduce some of the workload so that the human can spend more time on the human-to-human interaction? Never will AI replace teachers, but more will technology do some of the legwork? Will it do some of the legwork when it comes to assessment and marking and closing the feedback loop for older learners? We're also looking at economies of scale, and we're looking at, with projects like us, well, if we add another school to the mix, we'll be needing a new leadership team and a new head of year and a new this. And that will all be opportunities for people we value within our trust to say, oh, I'd like to apply for that, vice versa. There'll be others come full circle who've been at those schools. And in an ideal world, we want to give everyone the chance to stay in the profession because they feel valued and appreciated, and because we give them the tools to allow them to do the job. But the truth is, that's really tough right now, Dave. Many schools, most multi-academy trusts are forecasting deficit budgets this year, which in essence means their funding will not cover all their costs. The huge increase in energy costs and insurances, alongside just cost of living increasing in staff that hasn't been fully funded, means that in essence we're eroding away. And what that means is some of the things we really want to do, we can't do. Some of those roofs that we'd like to fix, or classrooms we'd like to redecorate, or new resources we'd like to acquire, they get pushed back to maybe next year, maybe the year after. And none of us like being in a setting where we don't have all the tools and all the things we'd like to do for our learners. So it's difficult times, but that's when it comes down to having good leadership across the trust, good support from a board of trustees, where we have a mindfulness towards sustainability. And so sustainability is making planned decisions that make you viable and make sure that you can afford to do things, so that you don't have to sacrifice the most important things, which is the human beings in the classroom, looking after our little learners or big learners, depending on where you are in the trust. And that's where we're very lucky. We've got a really good team at the heart of Hampton Academies Trust as well.
If people want to get hold of your book, where's the best place for them to go?
You can find my book on Amazon or WH Smith's or Waterstones or anywhere else like that. It's called The Awkward Questions in Education, The Elephants in the Room. So just the kind of conversations that I hope will be interesting and informative to folks. But more importantly, another big congrats to you, Dave, on 150 episodes. I love the breadth and depth of voices that you've brought to the table and empowered to share their experiences. So please continue doing your amazing stuff.
We was introduced to a lovely lady who I'm going to introduce to you now. She has written a wonderful book. It's written for children, but at the end of it, folks, I was in tears because it's a lovely, lovely story. And to tell us all about it is Breege. Welcome to the show, Breege.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I live in a small village in suburban London with my husband Shane, my son Charlie, my dog Rufus, and my cat Freddie. I also have another son whose name is Ruairi, and Ruairi very sadly died just 6 weeks after his first birthday in 2018. Ruairi had a very rare disease, and his death was pretty devastating to our family, and facing life without him afterwards and finding ways to stay connected to him have been very important for us and very powerful for us in healing after him. And so our book, Ruairi's Rocket to Heaven, is one of those ways that we do that, and one of the ways that we honor his life and help others through sharing Ruairi and sharing our story. When Ruairi died, Charlie was just 7 years old. And so for me, ensuring that he was okay and that we gave him the right support and the right guidance was one of the most challenging and one of the most important jobs that I had as his mum. I myself am a big reader. I've always been a big reader. And so I turned to look for books to help Charlie and really couldn't find a lot out there to help him. I have since come across some wonderful resources, but at the time I really struggled. And at the same time, Charlie was drawing a lot of pictures of himself with his brother. And he drew a picture of Ruairi going to heaven in a rocket. And it really blew me away. Just that reflection of such a wonderful imagination of a 7-year-old child. And that idea was the inspiration for the book. And initially I wrote the story on the notes app on my phone, and it stayed there for quite a long time. And I suppose for me, I've always been a writer, not that I'd call myself a writer in any way, but I've always written to try and understand my own feelings, and to try and process more difficult times in my life. So in late 2021, the timing just felt right. And I went back to that story that I'd written in my phone and thought, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to turn it into a children's book. So it's Charlie, who was then 10. He was my editor and really made sure that I stayed true to his experience of his life together with Ruairi and his feelings after he died. And we created Ruairi's Rocket to Heaven. The book, which was a really big part of creating it, was illustrated by a lady called Beth Cole. And I really feel very fortunate to have worked with Beth. She's an incredibly intuitive artist, and she really brought what were really our family memories to life in a very warm and gentle way, and in a very child accessible way, I felt like. And yeah, working with her was just brilliant. She had so much patience with me. I was very specific on wanting the details of the illustrations to be exactly right, especially the ones of Ruairi himself, capturing his pose and his lovely blonde curls and making sure they were perfect was really important. And yeah, she did an amazing job with that. A really, really talented artist. We met in a tiny little cafe close to where Beth lives, and I brought kind of like a sketch of the storybook with it was edited many times, but I had a framework for the story, and I had put some photos in there, and some kind of ideas for how I wanted things to be captured. And we went from there, and Beth didn't know me or my family beforehand, but I feel like she got to know us quite well through the process. And very wise beyond her years, very emotionally mature. She's quite a young artist, but she really tapped into the emotion so well within each memory and brought it to life in a wonderful way. Our story is not unique, and sadly there are other families in similar situations. And, I think the statistics would show on average, 1 in every 29 children in a classroom is either bereaved of a parent or a sibling, which means, there is really a need to be able to have conversations around difficult topics like death and bereavement, and having a book like Rory's Rocket to Heaven is a really nice way to introduce that topic with the child who might be finding it hard to find their own words. So, but the story, the first part of the story, like you say, it's very uplifting. It's Charlie and Rory's life together, and it talks about the things they liked to do together, like bath time and going to the park. And Charlie was really lovely with reading books to Rory and just playing with him on the floor. And then, it does get to the more difficult part of the book where, sadly, Rory just didn't get better and he did die and that was incredibly difficult. And with that kind of tragic death comes a lot of difficult feelings. And quite often, especially in young children, I think in all of us, they're very big, sadness, but also anger and confusion and fear and worrying about, will mom die too now, or will somebody
Mm,
else die? Will I die? And
mm,
all of these feelings can feel quite overwhelming, but actually they're all very normal
mm,
in this kind of situation. And being able to read that and bring that normality to them is important. And I think what I've learned over the years of writing this book and reading other books and being Charlie's mom, watching his experience of losing his baby brother is that these feelings are normal, and having them explained to you in a way that feels normal is very powerful. And that's what Rory's Rocket to Heaven aims to do, to just bring that comfort to other children, and also that hope that, you will be okay. It's awful what's happened, but you will be okay. And also that really important message of, it's okay to be happy, which brings me to a really important point, which is language and the language we use around death and dying. And I did have some help with the book from my own therapist and from Charlie's therapist at the time to just really ensure that the language I was using was the right language. Often we talk about someone has passed away or they've left us or gone. And those kind of words can be really confusing for children, especially young children. So it felt important in the book to use what therapists would call clean language. So death and died. And they can be sometimes jarring as adults to say. But it is important when you're sitting with children talking about this topic that you do use those words so that they understand in concrete terms.
Breege, what you've produced here is a wonderful book. This is going to help a lot of children, isn't it? Would you want to share what happens to the proceeds of the sales of your book?
Sure. Thank you. And that is that's really lovely to hear because that is the hope that it offers other children and their families healthy ways to express the difficult feelings that come with missing somebody that we really love. The proceeds of the book go to Shooting Star Children's Hospice, which is a hospice that's actually very close to where we live. And they provided my family with over 3 years of bereavement support after Rory died, which was really invaluable. So, as a way to say thank you from my family to the hospice, all profits from sales go to the hospice. And it also then obviously helps continue to support the wonderful work they do with life limited children and their families.
Folks, I don't know if you picked that up. I don't know what it's like in your country, whether you have hospices where you live in your country or wherever you live. But we have hospices and they do amazing work, absolutely amazing work. And what I learnt the other day was only a small percentage, a very, very small percentage of the work that they do, the finance that they get through, comes from the government. A lot of it all comes from people like Breege who do these wonderful things for them and raise funds. So if you've got a hospice, we just lost a dear teacher to our school who passed away not that long ago, and her husband said, "I want it all to go to the hospice," and I think that when you have something like that, people dig even deeper into their pockets because they know it there, but for the grace of whoever is above us, it can happen to any of us. Of any age, we could need a hospice, whether that's a young child or whether that's an older person. And they do amazing work, these hospices. So thank you for doing that. And so you're going to help even more children. It's just amazing what you've done through this book. Is this a one-off, Breege, or have you got other books?
This is currently the the one and only book. I am currently working on other writing, but probably not a children's book.
Okay.
And these things can take a really long time. But I am working and writing on a different project. But probably more of an adult book.
Now, if people want to get hold of your fabulous book, where's the best place for them to go?
So currently the book is available to buy on my website. I can send you through the details. It's www.storiesforourhearts.co.uk, and it's available to buy there for 9.99.
Thank you for producing such a wonderful book.
Thank you. It's been really nice to come on your podcast and share it and talk about Ruairi. So thank you so much for having me.
You have been listening to the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast. Join Captain Dave and his co-pilot Eddie Edster, the well-being dog, on another Launchpad soon. Until then, always remember to be kind, be respectful, and most of all, dream, believe, and shine. Dogsthorpe Infant School is part of Hampton Academies Trust.